So, I managed to piss off some proponents of modern agriculture, and it didn't take too much. I basically invoked the name of Cato, who wrote the book Agriculture, Ancient Roman Work of Literature. And in that book, he describes a whole lot. He gives you a whole lot of knowledge in that book. And this person who struck up this argument with me, I told him plain and simple. I said, go find that book. It's free. First 3 Google search results, you can find the book for free, and you should read it and understand that ancient pagans had basically mastered agriculture in ways that would put a lot of your modern day farmers to shame. Oh boy, did that person get pissed. They kept demanding that I propose an actual argument, because the argument had originally started over paganism versus Christianity. And I just went straight to the point in saying that pagans had mastered many forms of technology, and they also had moral codes, and they had high intellects. They had high intellectual capacity. And to prove it, I suggested several ancient Roman works of literature. Now, as you may know, the ancient Romans give us some of the only surviving works on pagan culture that there are today. But anyway, this guy, he wasn't hearing any of it, and he sure didn't go look up the books, which are free, by the way, and read the books like I suggested he ought to do, because I didn't want to get in an argument with him. Because my entire argument is in books that you can get for free that go back, some 2,000 years. He just wanted to argue. And he thought it was a great big joke that I told him that ancient pagans had mastered agriculture some 2,000 years ago or more. He couldn't accept that. And he got real mad. He didn't want to have a logical debate about it or anything. He came forth with all sorts of ad hominem insults, and he's just a really nasty person. And I chalk it up to this, right? Yeah, to be told and to have instinctual or intuitive knowledge that what that person is saying is right, to be told that the entire way that your people know how to do things nowadays would be gone without $100,000 tractors, without lab chemicals, without bags and bags and bags of fertilizer, tons of fertilizer, without someone to sell you seeds that are patented every single year to grow crops that go to feed livestock and run cars and not so much to feed people. Yeah, that should make you angry. But before you go flying off the hinges, you should think about what I told you. You should get angry, because anger is what's going to motivate you to go do what I did and figure it out the right way. So that if and when the system goes down, it doesn't take you with it. And I understand that's where your anger arises from, is that knowledge that if and when the system goes down, the system which is a product of 2,000 years of so-called Judeo-Christian development of the civilized world, if that system goes down, it's taking you, it's taking your children, and it's taking everyone who depends on your agricultural practices with it. So, I can understand you getting angry, but instead of going and getting angry, you should make a drastic turnaround in the way you're doing things now. If you make your subsistence off of agriculture, farming acres and acres of GMO crops, maybe you want to think about dialing that back. And when you dial that back, maybe sell off some of those acres so some other fool can go and get his hand in that market. Narrow down the land that you're responsible for to only what you need to subsist on with your gardening practices. Develop good, wholesome gardening practices. All the information to do this is free. You don't have to go to college to learn it. I know that for a fact. I'm several years into my own project here, and I'm working on basically a zero budget to do mine. And I'm not trying to grow food for every Tom, Dick, and Harry that doesn't know how to grow his own. That's not the point in time. That is not relevant to the point in time that we're in. Right now, every Tom, Dick, and Harry who needs food should start thinking about growing his own food, not getting somebody else to do it for him. Because where we're at right now, if that's the way you think, and if that system goes down, and you don't have anybody that you can rely on to give you food, well, guess what? You're up shit's creek. And no, you're not going to hunt your way out of it. Okay, why don't you look back to the literature going back to the Great Depression and ask yourself how well you think hunting is going to go. How far you think you can go on hunting alone. Think about it this way. How far do you think you could go without ball canning jar lids? Yeah, that's right. If you don't have ball canning jar lids, does it really matter if you know how to grow cucumbers? If you don't also know how to brew vinegar and distill it into strong vinegar so that you can preserve those cucumbers without needing a sealing jar and a canning pot that requires a special seal that comes from a factory? You got to think about this stuff. This is very important, because if that system goes down, and it very well can, that's all you got. So instead of getting mad at me, instead of cracking jokes and laughing at me and spending a half hour, 45 minutes writing up all these freaking paragraphs in the YouTube replies and in the Facebook replies, why don't you go and read? Because I know that's what you haven't done. You haven't read. And that was my entire argument to begin with. Was that after 2,000 years of development, you got a $100,000 tractor. Very few of you have sheep to make manure, to make your wool clothes out of. Very few of you grow cotton to make your clothes out of. Very few of you know how to tan a pelt to make your clothes out of. So what the hell are you going to do? What are you going to do when you don't have that tractor and you have to run a plow, but you can't keep horse stock without a shelf full of chemicals at the farm and fleet over there? What are you going to do when your horses keep keeling over from illness because your vet doesn't have conventional medicine and doesn't know what to do otherwise? Because back in the day, they knew how to keep their animals healthy. And if they got an infection of some sort, they knew how to deal with it using, get this, using herbs. Yeah, that's right. Herbs. You can laugh and you can call me stupid all day long. And you know how many infections in myself and how many illnesses I've gotten over using just herbs? Do you realize how stupid you sound? When you try to argue with me, who's gone through the trouble of educating himself on this, and you try to tell me that it's a bunch of hokey-pokey bullshit? Where in your Bible does it describe how to do this stuff? Oh, that's right. It doesn't describe how to do any sort of non-conventional agricultural anything in your Bible. It doesn't tell you how to treat an infection in your Bible using herbs. Where it does tell you how to do that is in ancient pagan literature. That's right. It was the very first work that you can find of its kind that'll tell you the ins and outs of how to do all these things from the soil up. How about Pliny's Natural History? How about every single herbalist that had to escape the grasp of the Vatican for damn near 1800 years? Or be called a witch? And by the year 1900, you'd be hard-pressed to find an herbalist. He was hiding out in the mountains somewhere. So the local Jesus freaks don't come and try to burn his house down while he's away, calling him a witch and all this stuff. Don't act like that wasn't the way it was. Alright, that's well documented in many, many, many works. Many more, in fact, than there are written on ancient agriculture. Many more than there are written on herbalism. There have been many works detailing the abuses that went on by Christians to people who weren't doing anything to anybody, who were only practicing the old ways. Well into the 1900s. In the 1800s, you still had witch burnings. Don't argue with me about it. That's useless. You know why it's useless? Because I've actually read. I've actually done my homework and my research. And so you can't argue with me. If you want to argue with me, you have to take your argument to 100 or 200 long dead authors and ones that are still alive. You have to take your argument to them. How about you, Smarty Pants? You ever wrote a book? You ever written anything? Published anything? No, I didn't think so. You just argue on the internet. Alright? What the hell you know about wildcrafting? Alright, let's say someone pillages your whole freaking garden one year. You come out in the morning, everything's gone. You don't got nothing to eat. What the hell are you going to do? Do you know what to do in that situation? Because I do. I've actually gone through all the trouble of learning to wildcraft and what you can eat straight from nature. Without hunting, without trapping, without fishing. I can last the winter out. Can you? I know what little things there are to scrounge up straight from nature. In fact, I could probably feed a family on it if I could get them all out there to do it with me. Do you? I didn't think so. You're as shallow as a piss puddle. You probably haven't done 1 single hour of research into your lifestyle. All your information's been handed to you, and you've never even bothered to vet it, have you? Complete dumbasses. You can learn a lot from someone like me. And you ought to listen to me when I point you to good sources of information. So how about these record cold temps? You know, I think I remember, not too long ago, a guy by the name of Varg Vikernes making predictions about a coming ice age. Telling you basically the same thing I'm telling you now. And did I get my viewpoints from Varg Vikernes? Hell no. I came to my conclusions long before I ever came upon Varg. But Varg will basically tell you the same thing. That there are 9, 10, 12 different ways that this system can just go down the shitter at the drop of a hat. He tells you to prepare. For the sake of you, your family, and your children. Is Varg going to be right about a coming ice age? Let's find out. I personally have no doubts that this system is going to collapse. Taking the tractors, the lab chemicals, the GMO seed companies along with it. You know, we're talking about temperatures. Winter is so brutal that vehicles won't run. What the hell do you do then? What do you do with your livestock when it's so cold outside that your vehicle won't run? You thought about that? You know, back in the old days when it got that cold, they brought the animals in the house. You can laugh all you want to about stuff like that. Kept the house warm, kept each individual animal and person warm, and that's the way it was done. And your animals lived through the winter, and you didn't have to worry about coming out there to find out that the furnace had run out of wood, or the furnace had frozen, or some such thing, and all your animals died overnight. Now you have no livestock. Do you think about shit like that? I do. I like to eat. I don't envision myself sitting there with my hands clasped, kneeling on the floor by the bed, praying for Jesus to come along and turn a breadcrumb into a loaf of bread, or a loaf of bread into 5,000 loaves of bread, or whatever the hell he is supposed to have done. As far as I know, that guy took water in the desert and turned it into wine. Well, what the hell would you do that for? I mean, really, you don't need wine in the desert. You need freaking water. It's the desert. But you don't think about that stuff, do you? No. You don't read very much. But anyway, the book I was referring him to is called Agriculture by Cato, C-A-T-O, and it's available for free from Project Gutenberg. Now, Project Gutenberg has about 56,000 books, I believe they say. So it's a treasure trove of free information, free books, and if you're the type of person who actually reads books, unlike the guy I was arguing with, then I would go over there and see what they have to offer. But you know, he said a couple more things that got me to thinking. And this is why I do argue with people, because even if it turns out that they're not interested in the truth at all, there's always the chance, it's a high probability, that they're going to bring something up, ask me something, or throw something my way that makes me reconsider what I was saying in a new way. And that's a great tool. So one of the things this guy said was, okay, so I told you that the argument started about Christianity versus paganism, just purely. And it quickly went into the ancient pagans were this and the ancient pagans were that. And I claim that the ancient pagans were masters of several different technologies, and that they had mastery in the field of agriculture. And this person said something that really threw me off. What they said was, they asked me, what does this have to do with an argument about polytheism versus monotheism? So, what does me talking about agriculture and technology have to do with this argument about one god versus multiple gods? And obviously they meant that the pagans worshipped multiple gods, like they worshipped the planets and so forth. And I answered him with one sentence, and I said, because your God ruined you. If the system goes down, you go down. Now, I was having an argument with him about what I purported to be fact, and I said to him that his God ruined him. How can I substantiate that? If this is an argument that's supposed to be based on fact only, and I make a statement like, your God ruined you, how do I substantiate that statement? Here's how. With any system, the proof is in the pudding. Whether the system works or not, whether it's efficient, can be judged by the results. We have 2,000 years of Christianity. Where are we at? And without going into a rant about the general condition of the world for honest people who live in it and what they have to deal with, that is really how I substantiate my entire argument. Because we have 2,000 years of Christianity. I think if it was going to do something ultimately, permanently, or long-term beneficial, we'd have seen that already. we'd have seen some sort of definite sign of that. Well, we don't see that. What we do see is that when we read works like Tacitus's Germany, we learn that the ancient pagans had systems of morals and had high intellect, high intellectual capacity. And by these two things, I'm going to substantiate another argument, and that's that Christianity is responsible neither for intellect in and of itself or the development of technology, which is something that heavily involves intellect, or morality. Christianity was not responsible for intellect, technology, or morality. Why do I think these things? Intellect is something that the Christian model fits inside of. Okay, intellect is a tool. Intellect is not something that we have rules for that are based in Christianity. Intellect, I like to think, is skeletoned by common sense. Maybe that's not the best way to put that, but I'll give it some thought. As near as I can ascertain right now, a working intellect is backboned by common sense. Common sense is not something that is taught in the Bible. In fact, a lot of what the Bible teaches evades common sense. It's the kind of stuff, it's the kind of mythology that really requires you to hold it in suspended belief for a long time and keep reconsidering it, finding what I would call minor truths within it. But a lot of the stuff in the Bible, if you take it seriously, you're going to very quickly find yourself well off of a path of common sense. For instance, if you take the story of Lot, and Lot was visited by angels, and the angels told him, leave the city, it's going to be destroyed. So the next morning he left the city, and this is where Christians will, this is one of the places in the Bible where Christians will quote that God is in strong disfavor of homosexuals. And I'm not in favor of homosexuality. That's not the point here. The point here is that after the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed, allegedly due to the fact that there were homosexuals and rapists there, Lot leaves and he goes up into the mountains with his daughters, where his daughters get him drunk and spawn two races of people with him. Now, I don't think I really have to tell people that incest is not something that is considered normal by like 99.999% of the population. It's pretty far outside of what we would consider to be common sense to think that it's okay to commit incest, to do incest. But the Bible doesn't tell you that, nor does the Bible frame this in any kind of, in any way that would suggest that there's a good chance that it's allegory or metaphor. It's pretty down to earth, other than the part with the angels coming and delivering a prognostication. There's not too much that's far outside of possibility. It tells you a complete down-to-earth story, and whether you want to believe that the so-called rain of fire was actually coming from the heavens or from enemy forces with catapults, and maybe these two so-called angels were actually messengers from the army that was about to attack the city, and Lot was maybe a spy against Sodom and Gomorrah or whoever. He was a spy to these enemy forces. He delivered them intelligence as they were preparing to launch an offensive against the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what I thought. Because in the story, the two angels are supposedly at risk of being raped by a gang of homosexual men in the city as soon as they arrive. Angels? They have to worry about rape? You kidding me? Aren't angels supposed to be impervious to all physical damage? Aren't they kind of like ethereal beings? Or are angels flesh and blood? Which would be the only way it makes sense that they could be raped. And so, putting the story in that context with the physical enemy invasion, where the enemy launches pots of flaming liquid out of catapults onto the cities, which would pretty much resemble a rain of fire as they came down, light everything on fire all at once and kill everybody. You continue on with the story, trying as hard as you can to tell yourself that this is an actual account of events that occurred in the world. They go up in the mountains and then they commit incest. Now, how the hell am I supposed to turn that into allegory? Or metaphor? How else am I supposed to frame that? What is incest a metaphor for? Nothing. Nothing as far as I can see. But that's what they do. These chosen people of Yahweh, whom Yahweh supposedly sent angels in to get them out of the city, these people of God, all three of them, decide that this is a good idea, and they do it. So, let's get this straight. God doesn't like homosexuality and rape, but he's fine with incest? Yeah. That's just one thing in the Bible that is not a parable. It's not an obvious story that's supposed to be taken as metaphor. It's about what are purported to be real people. So in that case, and in many other cases, for most of the Bible, it's hard to apply common sense principle to it. There is no way in hell that the Bible teaches common sense. In fact, I believe it says in there, and I'll look this up and I'll put it in another video if I can find the verse, that to trust yourself is foolish. Here we go. Proverbs 28:26. Those who trust their own insight are foolish, but anyone who walks in wisdom is safe. How do you like that little bit of cognitive dissonance? How in the hell do you separate insight from wisdom? To me, this statement is pure psychological manipulation. It's psychological warfare. It's taking two things that cannot be separated and instructing someone to separate them. You know, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts today, and they were basically riding right up to the edge of Christian apologism, or Catholic apologism. They were going down that line of thought that Europe would not be what it is today if it were not for the Catholics or the Christians. And what they mean is it would not be such a nice place as it is today, filled with people with wonderful human attributes, if it were not for the Catholics. So let's take a look at this here. Now, this is the same crowd of people that are going to be arguing for race realism. If they admit, they accept the truth that being of one race or another race as a human is going to imbue you with certain attributes, such as higher intelligence or your ability to produce vitamin D. But then they're also claiming that an ideology such as Christianity can so drastically alter the course of what was predetermined genetically as to completely transform a race of people. And so, two people who think like that, and before I say this, bear in mind that I am a race realist. My question to you is, if I take a person who is genetically inferior in the way that they need to produce more vitamin D to survive a colder climate, and I put them with a race of people who have that genetic quality that they desire to have, and they don't interracially mix, will that group who has the inferior genetic ability, if they just believe hard enough for enough generations that they can do it, will it happen? The answer is no. In any natural environment where you do not have all this technology, those people will not be able to survive in the same climate as the other people. So there won't be multiple generations. And those people who have the superior ability will not be able to make them survive in this climate without advanced technology that destroys the environment. That's proven fact. That's how it's seen to work in the real world. So why would you believe that by taking the writings of someone who does not speak of building things, of farming things, of anything really of practical value? I mean, the Bible doesn't really reference anything practical, like it doesn't go into instructions about how to do specific things. Why would you believe that that book magically imbues you, or that religion, or following that religion, or being around people that follow that religion would magically imbue you with abilities that you didn't have before? Especially when the book itself, which is what you're supposed to be backboning the religion on, doesn't talk about improving in these ways. It doesn't talk about it at all. It doesn't go into how to do metallurgy, architecture, any of this stuff. And yet people believe that having a Catholic Church around somehow improved people to such an extent that they did these things that they were not naturally inclined to do before, genetically predisposed to do. And that right there, what I just said, is only designed to highlight the fallacy behind that argument. Now I'll tell you how I know for a fact that Christianity did not lead people to improve architecture or metallurgy or any of this stuff. And I'll give you one good example that'll be quick and easy for you to go and look up. It is a man named Marcus Vitruvius Polio. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong in some way, but Marcusvitrius Look him up. Born circa 80 to 70. He was born between 80 and 70 BC. Died after 15 BC. Commonly known as Vitruvius, and this is from Wikipedia, was a Roman author, architect, civil engineer, and military engineer during the 1st century BC. This is before Christ. Known for his multi-volume work entitled De Architectura. And this book is also known as 10 Books on Architecture. And if you go on YouTube, you can find an audiobook that is really, really, really fucking long. So you can't give me the excuse that you don't have time to read. This is something that you want to find time to read. This is a good set of books. And I'm going to go over some of the things that they talk about in these books, written between 80 and 15 BC. Here I'm going to read some of the table of contents of the 10 books. Book 1. The site of a city. City walls. Directions of the streets. Remarks on winds. Book 2. Brick, sand, lime, pozzolana. Stone. Pozzolana is concrete. Building walls. Timber. Highland and lowland fir. Book 3. On symmetry in temples. Classification of temples. Foundations and substructures of temples. Book 4 is almost entirely about temples. So there goes your argument about there being no coherent, widely practiced religion or spirituality. Right out the window. Book 5. The Treasury, Prison, and Senate House. The Theater. Harmonics. Sounding vessels in the theater. Greek theaters. Acoustics of the site of a theater. Baths, harbors, breakwaters, and shipyards. Book 6. On climate as determining the style of the house. Yeah, no, these guys, they weren't advanced at all. That's just, they were not advanced until the Christians got a hold of them for 1800 years and killed a bunch of them. The farmhouse, the Greek house, the proper exposures of the different rooms, proportions of the principal rooms, on to book 7 here. Floors, the slaking of lime for stucco, vaultings, and stucco work. The decadence of fresco painting. Marble for use in stucco. Cinnabar and quicksand. Book 8, how to find water. And I'm sure this is going to be really important in how you mix cement, right? How to find water, rainwater, various properties of different waters. Tests of good water. Yeah, they had water tests before the birth of Jesus, apparently. Who would have thought? Leveling and leveling instruments, aqueducts, wells, and cisterns. Book 9. The zodiac and the planets, the phases of the moon, the course of the sun, the 12 signs, northern constellations, southern constellations, astrology and weather prognostics, the analemma, I don't even know what that is, and its applications, sundials and water clocks. Book 10. Oh, this is a good one here. Machines and implements, hoisting machines, the elements of motion. Engines for raising water, water wheels and water mills, the water screw, the pump of Ctesibius. The Ctesibius. See, yeah, I can't do this. The water organ, the hodometer, catapults or scorpions, ballista, stringing and tuning of catapults, siege machines, the tortoise. I imagine that's some kind of war machine. So yeah, I mean, the argument that they didn't have developed technology is just completely out the window. From agriculture to architecture to fine art, they were doing it. And then these Christians have the audacity, and these Catholics have the audacity to claim that they somehow made these people better. You know, it would seem to me that if they had all this stuff around, you know, before 0 BC, shouldn't they have gotten a lot better than they did in 2,000 years? Shouldn't they have developed a lot further than they are now? Shouldn't we, like, you know, have better energy harvesting methods and stuff that doesn't pollute our environment? Shouldn't we be off of plastic already? You know, when you just apply a little bit of common sense and reasoning to this, the whole religious argument just falls apart. So, again, speaking to the race realists and the European culture and heritage preservationists, we have to consider something important here. Now, I've just shot down all your arguments about Christianity or Catholicism somehow assisting in the technological evolution of Europe. And I want you to consider that several 100,000 to several million people were killed as a direct result, one way or another, of this ideology of Catholicism or Christianity, Second Temple Judaism. Let's just lump it all under that, huh? A lot of people had to die because of it. So how are we justifying that? Are you really going to tell me that the European people that you think so highly of don't naturally, in their genetics, possess the ability to be moral people? I mean, if you think that, okay, what you need to do is you need to go read Tacitus's Germany and find out that these pre-Christian Germans had a tighter moral code than you do today. Much tighter. Life and death penalties. Ostracization from the community would sometimes be the result of violating this code of morals that our ancient ancestors had. But you're really going to try to tell me that Europeans killing Europeans somehow contributed to their greater evolution spiritually? To me, that would be like the same as saying that you taught your kid to be better as an adult by burning him 100 times with a soldering iron, deliberately, or with a cigarette or some such thing. Something sadistic like that. A lot of sadism, a lot of torture. Torture devices and torture facilities being promulgated and used in a way that is never, to my knowledge, recorded anywhere else in written history. The Catholics, the Christians, torture and killing over ideology. And then they go and they say things like, well, if it wasn't for us, Islam would have invaded Europe, and we wouldn't have a European culture to this day. Let me just put it this way. Nobody fights like someone of European heritage. When you piss us off, we're going to clean house. And we're absolutely going to win. You could say that we don't enter fights that we're not going to win. And that's how it's always been. And it has always had to be that way because other races don't take our side. We're by ourselves. And we start shit, we've got to finish it. We aren't majority numbers on this earth. And I don't believe we ever have been. But we're here, aren't we? We don't need a foreign alien ideology from the Middle East, from the desert, to live on, to survive on, and to defend our soil. We never required anybody to teach us how to plant corn or how to fertilize soil. We were doing it 2,000 years ago. There's written evidence as proof. And I hope you get where I was going with that one, because if I just come out and say it on YouTube, my channel will probably get banned. But it's another lie that's pushed in American history, and hardly anybody sees it, and I'm just tired of hearing about it. It makes zero sense whatsoever. Quit letting them lie to you, folks. I know you're more intelligent than this. You know, if you're a European preservationist, you should be against anything that causes needless destruction of your people. If an ideology does that, an ideology is just a tool and you need to dispose of it. An ideology is not in your blood. It has to be taught to you after you know language, after you've been taught language. It is not in your blood. If you have an ideology that's killing your people, or has killed your people, and nothing has ever been done in terms of, well, justice, okay? How do you even put justice to that? How do you justify that? That because people believe differently, their brothers and sisters and cousins and all that, they had to die. It should not work like that. And if you have an ideology that causes those kind of problems, hundreds of thousands and millions of people getting killed, you need to chuck that out the window. You need to disavow it. And if you don't disavow it, you can't then say that you're not behind it and you don't accept that that was a good thing that happened. If you stand behind Christianity and Catholicism as a European preservationist, then you're saying that you accept, that you think it's necessary for your people to die over ideas, not territory, okay? Because Christianity and Catholicism are ideologies. They cannot have a territory. Nations have territories. Countries have territories. And it is the blood of those people that make that nation or country what it is. The blood is tied to it inseparably. The ideology is not inseparable. The blood is not going to change if you decide to discard the ideology tomorrow. you are still going to be predisposed to pathological altruism, as an example. And that is a glorious thing that your ancestors deserve the sole credit for bringing your lineage unbroken to this day, allowing you to be who you are. Your ancestors are solely responsible for the preservation of your bloodline. They are the ones who deserve all of the credit, not some foreign ideology. And there's no apologizing for a bad ideology. You don't apologize for it. You can do one of two things with it. You can change the Bible, permanently modify it, go around the world and get rid of every unmodified version of it that still includes all these terrible ideas that led to this shit to begin with. You can modify the Bible, or you can disavow Christianity and Catholicism. You can disavow Judaism. Those are the two things that you can do, because you can't apologize for a broken ideology any more than you can apologize for, say, using a broken machine on a job site and it accidentally injures somebody. And you knew it was broken when you showed up and it had the potential to injure somebody. There's no apology. So, well, we're coming up on the 52-minute mark here, and this has been a good rant. I'm going to go ahead and drop it off here. Hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for listening.